My name is Richard Ferrer, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired. Because of Google Architect program, I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the Glowcloud team.
Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to talk about how to get the tech careers you want, how to become what you're looking for in tech, and I'm here to answer your questions. And the reason I run these sessions about once per week is I remember when I started my tech career about 25 years ago, a little over 25 years ago, I was a nurse practitioner practicing internal medicine. And when I started my career, I was given so much bad advice. And for a short period of time, I followed the advice and it got me nowhere. Sure, I had about 6 certifications, but no one was willing to hire me. And then I started asking the people that did the hiring what they were looking for, figured out exactly what I needed. And a few months later, I had a senior engineering position and then was a lead architect within 3 months and a principal architect within 2 years. And you can all do the same. And you can get there faster than I did if you know which mistakes to actually avoid. So I want to help you get to your dream career. I'll tell you that I spent about 2 decades now helping people get their first tech job, get promoted in tech, and change careers into tech. And it's been some of my most fun life's work. And there's people that I've trained that are working at Apple, Amazon, Cisco, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan, Chase Bank, PNC Bank, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Zscaler, Palo Alto Networks, and so many other prestigious organizations. And I just want you to get to your goals. So bring us your questions so we can help you. Bring us your questions. How do I become this? How do I do this? I just want to help. Now, before we begin this, I'd like to talk about a couple of free things we actually have for you. First, we have a guide on how to become a cloud architect. It's going to be in the description of this video. We also have guides to become other kinds of architects like AI architects and enterprise architects as well. And they're all completely free in the description of this video. So these guides will list the skills you need to be successful, what management is looking for, and when they hire, because I want anybody that wants a great job to be able to have one. So that is completely free in the description of this video. Now, realistically speaking, tomorrow we're going to hold a webinar on how to become an artificial intelligence architect. And if you have questions about other architecture careers, you can join us. It's going to be me and my good friend David Lithicum. David Lithicum's got about 35 years of enterprise architecture and AI architecture and cloud architecture experience. And I bring about 25 years of network architecture, security architecture, and enterprise architecture experience. So tomorrow, David and I will answer any questions you have. We'll talk about the AI architect role for a little bit. And after we talk about the AI architect role for a little bit, we'll literally be open to asking any types of questions you have because we just want to make sure you have the best career you can. So I kind of hope these things will be able to be there to help you. So please know that. And We have a lot of big promotions going on in our organization right now. Temporarily, there's 50% off on a lot of things. So if you desire to move into something, check out our website and take advantage of the sale while that time is going on. But now I really want to help people get to their careers. So maybe give me a hashtag of the career you're interested in so I actually know them, like hashtag cloud architect, hashtag enterprise architect, hashtag solutions architect. Because I want to get you all to your goals. So I'll be taking your questions, and don't be shy about bringing them. How technical do you need to be as a cloud architect versus a solution architect, or is there a difference? So, the reality is the architect role is not a very technical role. It is somewhat technical. So, what I really want to do is this. What if I break down the architecture roles? I'll map it out for them. I'll draw you, and I'll tell you what each architect is typically responsible for. And I think if I do that, I'll also explain the types of skills you need to have in each architecture role. And I think that's going to be very helpful. So share some slides in a minute, but I'll also do some whiteboarding. But I think that's really the key is if you understand what we do in each one of these roles, you'll understand the skills that you need to be more successful in this role. So I'm going to map it out, and then I'm also going to show you some statistics, some more information along the way. So bear with me. So anybody that knows me knows I love whiteboards. So let's whiteboard out these architecture roles. So if we look at the architect spectrum, at the top of the what do you call it? At the top of the spectrum in terms of strategy, typically in terms of high pay, we're going to have the enterprise architect. And then we will, beneath that, we have the cloud architect and then the solutions architect. And I'll show the difference. Whoops. So in this particular environment, I was going to show you that later. At the top, we have enterprise architecture. And enterprise architecture is about giving the company a long-term strategic advantage. Now, what are the three main components of business? People, those that work for the business, processes, or how that business gets its job done, or the technologies that we can use to supercharge the employees. So that's the three components of business. So with the enterprise architecture, we're really focusing on people, processes, and technology. Now, if you really think about this, if we're in an enterprise organization to get this done at this level, this means I need an enterprise architect that's in the room with the C-suite. I need the enterprise architect that's presenting to the board to get the next $1 billion needed for their technology architect. Sure, I need someone that knows how to coordinate 100 different vendors in your IT infrastructure, because believe me, there'll be at least 100 vendors. I need an enterprise architect that knows how to manage stakeholders and work across stakeholder boundaries. And with those stakeholders, get them aligned, get their support, get their buy-in. I need someone that can change the culture for an adoption of a new technology that includes the marketing campaigns and getting buy-in and support from the executives to move it forward and creating campaigns to get the employees to adopt the technology. So at this level, we're kind of everything. And because of this, we don't get to be too deep. Now, I'll tell you, in this role, I would consider it to be 80% business, and I would consider it to be 20% technology maximum. I have trained lots of enterprise architects. I've gotten people enterprise architecture jobs as their first job as well. But here you're dealing with you're an executive. You're probably going to work in a suit each day or that kind of equivalent, and you're getting executive pay. Now, for argument's sake, let's say everything is cloud-based right now. And to some degree it is. And I'll show you what I mean by cloud-based. A normal enterprise has multiple clouds. 98% have more than one cloud of enterprises and 89% of all business. So what does this really mean? Let's look at what your cloud technology really is going to be and actually is. So most organizations, if they don't have one now, are adopting a private cloud. And this could be something like VMware, Nutanix, OpenStack. And the reason they're doing this is workloads that are high performance, that need a lot of compute power, could be 300, 400% cheaper to run in the data center. Much cheaper to run these things in a data center. You've got the ability to create greater performance in the data center, less latency, greater security, more tunability of the environment. So in a modern enterprise, we're dealing with a private cloud. I just put Nutanix there. Could be OpenStack, could be anything. It's just a private cloud. And then reality is we're going to have two clouds at bare minimum. And we're going to have something like an AWS. We're probably going to have one of the big three. We'll always have one of the big three. And we'll probably have an Azure. It could be an AWS and a Google. Honestly, you could find an AWS, Azure, and an Oracle and a Google. And that's pretty common too. So lots of clouds. And this happens for both reasons of best of breed architectures. It happens for price optimization because you can negotiate your vendors against each other, put your highest cost workloads in the data center and really negotiate your vendors against each other. And it doesn't cost more to put 50% in AWS and 50% in Azure than it does on 100% in either one. And now you've got bargaining power. So typically you have this. Now, on these AWS, Azure, clouds and Nutanix clouds, what are you going to have? You're going to have the organizations, realistically speaking, and I'll give you some stats on some things you would think about in a typical enterprise. So you might have 200,000 IP addresses. You might have 10,000 routes in the internal routing table, and that gets complex and it needs some serious sophistication to do this. You're typically going to have, say, 50 application vendors, and that's nothing. It could be 100 or 200. Let's say we've got 20,000 servers. Let's say 5 petabytes of data. So, I mean, this is the kind of environment we're going to be dealing with. And we're going to be putting these applications, we're going to be putting our security input, we're going to put all of this. So underneath, in order for this cloud architect to work with, they're going to need to build a team of specialty architects. So a security architect is going to come in and help the cloud architect at this level. We'll have AI architects that are going to come in. We'll have DevOps engineers that are going to come in. We'll have automation people that are going to come in. We'll have cloud engineers and software developers and application architects and data scientists and IAM architects that are all going to be feeding in to this role of the cloud architect. So when you can see here, this cloud architect is a big position, and it's almost like an enterprise architect. And if there's organization doesn't have a good enterprise architecture practice, the cloud architect has to do this. But now you're dealing with someone that's got to deal with a wide variety of applications. You're dealing with someone who needs to be strategic. This person does need to know all the cloud technologies, but if they know they need a virtual machine, it's going to be a virtual machine. If they know they need a container, it's going to be a container. If they know they need a function as a service, it'll be a function as a service, like a Lambda function or an Azure function. If they know they're looking for application virtualization, they'll know how to upload their code and how to host that, and they can do it themselves in any one of these clouds. So now we're dealing with someone that really needs to know the network, data center, and the cloud technology. So where does the solution architect function? Well, the reality is most businesses don't have solutions architects. So the only people, typically speaking, that hire solutions architects are the people that are actually the providers themselves. And what I mean by this is if you work for Cisco as a solutions architect, you're going to be designing, presenting, and selling Cisco stuff. If you work for IBM as a solutions architect, you'll be designing and presenting and selling IBM stuff. So the solutions architect is typically a pre-sales role. So now you've got a solutions architect for, let's say from AWS, we're going to call AWS, and we're going to be speaking to their solutions architect. So let's call this the solutions architect. Now, the solutions architect, if they're good at what they do, and if they're good at what they do, they would start up here with the executives and understand the people, processes, and technologies. But most solutions architects don't know to do that, unfortunately. So let's make this 75/25 in terms of business and tech for the cloud architects. 75% business, 25% tech. Now, when we get to the solutions architect, the reason a company is going to call the AWS solutions architect in is to get specifics on AWS stuff. So the solutions architect's still an executive role. They don't code, they don't configure, they don't need to touch the technology. If there's a proof of concept, they're going to lead it. So it's not a hands-on role. It's nothing like a solutions architect certification. This is an executive role. It's more about designing systems to optimize business performance. But now if you're the solutions architect for AWS, what do you need to know more of? Well, instead of just knowing what kind of virtual machines you need and knowing how to plan the number of CPU cores, the amount of DRAM and disk performance, now you may need you get to the level of which virtual machine do I choose. So this person has to be very familiar with the AWS instance family. Now, this person would have to be more familiar with AWS pricing strategies with regards to reserved instance or burstable instance. They're still not going to be touching the technology, but they're going to need to know more specifics. This person is going to know all the strengths, weaknesses, and limitations of DynamoDB. Now, it's their job, realistically speaking, when possible, to design, present, and sell solutions from their company. But this person still should be able to give you the advice that says, look, don't use our DynamoDB here. It's not the right application for you. So they're still supposed to be a trusted advisor, the solutions architect, while they're designing, presenting, and being on a sales organization of a client. So it's a little bit of a tricky position. So the solutions architect needs to be more technical. Now, I'll tell you, I've worked as a solutions architect. I was a principal solutions architect. And the reality was I could have done my job and never touched the technology ever, which I actually did once I learned the secret to getting promoted and focus more on the business outcomes. But as a solutions architect, it's not that technical. I would say it's 60% business and 40% tech. So it's there, but it's not going to be hands-on tech. It's going to be specific expertise of the vendor. So at the enterprise architecture, you're focusing on predominantly strategy and choosing the technologies of the future. At this cloud architect level, we're kind of hosting everything everywhere. And we're really focused on that. And what we'll be doing is we'll be using either the cloud architects or enterprise architects. We're going to be calling solutions architects to come in because they're going to know more about the product. We're going to be evaluating firewalls. And when we need a firewall, we'll bring in a solutions architect from Palo Alto, and we'll bring in a solutions architect from Cisco. And we'll ask them to talk about their firewalls, and we'll learn how their firewalls works and how adaptive they actually are. So these are the kind of things we're typically talking about at the solutions architect. More at the sales, more at the tactical, less strategic, but because of that, the role needs to know a little more about the technology. They're all good roles. I've had it. A lot of times the solutions architect's a great entry level into technology role. And I typically try to train the architects into moving into bigger, more strategic roles because there's just so much opportunity long term. They're closer to the C-suite. There's a lot of opportunities to get promoted into bigger and better roles. But they're all good roles, and it's all about picking the role that's right for you. Chris, bring in the next one. And please feel free to ask questions. We're not scary. Yannick Wiley, nice to hear your question. Hi, Mike. You're a full stack developer, front end focused. You're looking to transition in cloud computing and was wondering if I knew a path where you could take advantage of the skills you've acquired as a web developer. So, yes. Now, Yannick, what would you really like to do in your career? What's really going to make you happy? Because the skills that you have as a web developer are only going to give you the skills as a web developer, and to get to anything else is going to take training. So if I knew what you really wanted to do, we can talk about it. So I saw at some point you put something #generative AI. So let's talk about what you would need to do to transition into one of these types of roles. Now, Yannick, I always recommend architecture roles in today's world and not engineering roles. And here's the reason. Much of the code of the future will be written by AI, and much of the work done by engineers can and is already being done by AI. And all of the work of the architects cannot be performed by AI. How bad is it? Well, about a year and a half ago, IBM started to announce the productivity enhancements in AI and how it was laying off back-end and non-customer facing roles. And they did that because they were able to release some of their technology people with AI. Google now, as of about 6 months ago, was writing 25% of their code with AI. Facebook talked about getting rid of their bottom performers because the AI codes better than they do. So understand that the software, the actual programming itself, the web development is not going to be one of your long-term skills if you're looking to transition into something, which gives you the opportunity to move into engineering or move into architecture. So Yannick, I want you to understand how good AI is actually getting and how smart AI is actually getting. So a lot of the work that engineers actually do, the hands-on, a lot of it can be done by AI. So I'll talk about what you are the architect thing, and then I'll talk about the engineering thing. To become an architect, understand that there is no coding in our entire world. So none of that will come with you. But what will come with your web development is, I'm hoping at some point in your web development time, you interfaced with the customer and you learned what the customer's goals would be and what the kind of market the customers were trying to cater to and the kind of things the customers would desire. And I hope at some point you spoke to the customer about the user experience and what they wanted that website to feel with. Because that, if you did that, that's going to be incredibly valuable experience for you. And that's the kind of thing that cannot be replaced by AI. So if you were an AI architect, you'd have to learn how to design these systems. So you'd have to learn the business skills, like how to sell your solution to the organization, the kind of presentations you would give at an executive briefing, at a conference, even to get hired as the role. And there's a presentation as part of the interview process. How would you build a business case to show the organization how they're going to derive a profitable return on investment from the technology spending they actually made, for example? You'll have to lead meetings. You'll have to facilitate meetings. You'll have to respond to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, for example. These are going to be what we're going to be doing. You'll lead an architecture team, but you're not going to touch the technology. But in order to do that role, you still need to put yourself in a position where you understand the network, you understand the data center, you understand compute, storage, for example, databases, and how to scale databases, load balancing, reverse proxies, that kind of thing. You'll still need to understand security. And then you'll need to understand the components of designing AI, like how to get to the goal, what the components of you're going to be, what your data is, what do you need to do with the data, your data practices, for example. For example, data hygiene practices, model optimization, tuning, those kind of things. And then figure out how to match the technology to the client's needs. So that would be the architecture side. Now, if you wanted to go into engineering, the good news is your programming skills will probably be very useful. Now, you'll probably be programming in Python more, and there's a lot of R and some of these big data things, but there's other languages which you could learn. But the key is, I'd recommend you to stay way above that because AI can code. So if you want to be an engineer and stay happy as an engineer and you wanted to be a generative AI engineer, you'd have to have the very good development skills that are going to have to be much better than AI is or AI ever could be, because you don't want to compete with AI, which is basically free compared to us. You're also going to have to be able to understand the systems that you're going to be working with. So what is the impact of this on another part of the system? How would we optimize the performance of this? What systems need to occur along the way? And when you reach that level, now you are a strategic engineer. It's like, okay, we've got to have this problem. In order to tune this, we got to do this to the network, this, and here. And then it's okay, now what other ways could we tune in and optimize? So now if I want an engineer, I want someone that's got deep knowledge on that. Deep knowledge. So they can analyze every problem, because I don't need a person to do the basic stuff. I can use AI for that and have a person tune it and supervise it. I need the person's analysis. Now, what do I really need in a good engineer? There's an African proverb, which I truly believe in. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And the best engineers can go build a team. They can communicate well, and they can design the best stuff you can possibly imagine. So, and give advice to the architects, give advice to the configurers and the more administrative people. A good engineer knows the technology so well and the way each and every component works that they can fix it if it breaks quickly because they know what they're looking for, because they know the technology. So there's that. But understand life is very cumulative. So it's always okay, but it doesn't matter your background. Delroy was a paramedic before I trained him and got him hired as a cloud security architect. I'm sorry, he was an emergency medical technician. Al was a sales rep before he got his senior solutions architect job at Deloitte. Wallace Agano was a sales rep before he got hired at JP Morgan Chase as an enterprise architect. Jermaine was selling landscaping gear, but we trained him and he got hired as an enterprise architect at Southern New Hampshire University. Yvonne was a waiter. We trained him and he's now working at AWS as a solutions architect, and he's been promoted since he's been there because he's so awesome. So I kind of hope that makes sense. The world is your oyster. What do you want to do? Because you can do it all. And I'd love to give you advice once we know it. But old skills are good for your old job. New jobs sometimes are about learning new skills. That's okay. We can learn anything we want. Follow-up question. What certifications would you recommend for someone aspiring to be a cloud architect? Great question. So flying kites, there's two parts of the cloud architecture process. One is learning what you need to become an architect. And another is making your profile look pretty with certifications. I'm going to make it very clear to you, flying kites, there is no certification in the world except for the Cisco Certified Design Expert that has anything to do with architecture for the most part, except for maybe TOGAF and the Zachman framework and things like that. Everything else, like the AWS Solutions Architect Professional, is systems administration. And there's no architecture in there. There's no talk about how to optimize business. There's no talk about how to integrate with other systems. There's no talk about how to align people, processes, and technology. It's just a vocabulary test. Here's the name of something. AWS Simple Storage Solution, or S3. Now, the rest of us knew it was object storage, but part of that exam was learning AWS calls object storage S3. Now, here's what AWS says. You can have this version of object storage, this version of object storage, this version of object storage. And here's systems administrator. Here's how do you click it. Well, the problem is, as an architect, I can't walk into a CIO's office and use AWS S3. Security would be escort me out. I'd be fired and I'd look like I was biased. I can talk to the chief information officer about his object storage on AWS, Azure, and Google and his OpenStack or her OpenStack data center. That I can do. I could talk about a migration and different challenges of the migrations of different migration strategies. But the second I start using marketing fluff words that I learned in a certification, I'm no longer a trusted advisor. That's why when you go to their doctor, they don't even mention the brand name of a drug ever. They always use the generic drug and the generic name on the prescription because we can't afford to look or be biased as trusted advisors. A medic isn't a trusted advisor, and so is an architect. Now, what will the certification do? It will get you an interview. And these are my 3 best certifications for the interview. The first one is either the AWS Solutions Architect Professional or the Azure Solutions Architect Expert. Why? Because it shows something that looks like an architecture certification that shows some degree of mastery on the cloud provider. Now, I've interviewed over 1,000 people with this, and none of them knew anything about architecture unless they were trained in architecture, but it's going to get you that interview, so go get it. Now, the next thing that I really like right now is TOGAF 10. And I'll tell you why I adopted TOGAF 10. A lot of the cloud architecture certifications were so weak on anything related to architecture. And employers started to get wise, and they know that someone's got an AWS Solutions Architect Professional. They probably don't know architecture. And the architecture is the process of aligning the organization's people, processes, and technology. Architecture is about driving business performance. Architecture is about making sure that people are more efficient. The work processes are better. The technologies are chosen in a non-biased strategy. And the technologies are chosen based upon what meets that organization's needs, the organization's goals, and not based on anything that's in a certification. Now, TOGAF 10 is great for this. TOGAF 10 is a framework that says, architect, don't forget there's a lot of steps along the way. No, it won't teach you how to do things, but it'll give you a set of steps. Like initially scope the architecture, find the vision for the architecture. And when you figure that out, figure out where you're trying to take the company, map out the business architecture, optimize the business architecture, which was the people and the processes, that kind of thing, value streams. Then figure out what your technology is. Then figure out, will your technology get you to future business architectures? And if not, what's the gap between the two? So TOGAF is a great process. And I got to tell you, when I put an AWS Solutions Architect Professional or an Azure Solutions Architect Expert with a TOGAF, it gets pretty good. Now, flying kites, I got to tell you, I've had so much good luck with the CISSP that I've almost fallen in love with the certification. And everybody that knows me knows I don't love certifications. But why do I love the CISSP? Well, they do a good job of giving you that business executive, that architecture perspective of the various technologies. And I like that. I like that there's somewhat of a comprehensive approach to risk mitigation. It's still weak, but it's good. And it's a great intro level for people to learn. And it really covers the scope of all the stuff that would be out in our world as security. So for that, I love that. I tend to love that. So, those things are really great. I'll also tell you from experience, I put the CISSP on someone's resume, and it's like a magnet for interviews. And I can recently tell you, I had someone I trained, and they got the CISSP. They didn't have any of their 5 years experience, so they're technically a CISSP-associate, which is okay. I always tell people to take it without the experience. And for some reason, he decided to go on a security admin interview. And the company interviewed him, and they're like, whoa, you're not a security admin. So then they said, we'd like you to interview for the cloud security architect position. So he interviewed for that position. And they said, you're a little better than this. How would you feel about working as a security architect and the chief information security officers? And that was the key, because he was trained and he had the CISSP. Now, we gave him the training to make him an awesome security architect. And that was only doing in our cloud architect program with all of the extra security we put in there. But that's the key, is anybody can get these jobs. And they're the 3 certifications I recommend for cloud architects. I don't recommend anything related to engineering because it sends the wrong message. There are all 3 architecture type certifications, and they're going to serve you well on your resume. Just make sure you get the training in how to become an architect, because they won't learn that in any of those certifications. And if you're curious about the skills, check out the description of this video, Flying Kites. In the description, there'll be a book on how to become a cloud architect, and it's going to cover certifications. For the most part, it'll cover skills that you need. And of course, we've got a free webinar on AI architecture if you're curious to learn about any of the architecture roles. It'll be me and David Lithicum on Thursday. We'll talk about AI architecture, but you know what? Any other architecture roles you want to know about, we'd love to talk to you. Would I please talk about the salary trajectory for different cloud architects? So, yes. So I want to talk about architecture skills that pay versus skills that are fun to learn. So what I want you to understand is, here's what's going to determine how good your architecture pay is: the outcomes you can deliver for your clients, or if you work for an organization like I did in Cisco and there was a sales component to the job, the amount of revenue you can bring in. So there's typically going to be one of those components. Now, you can also be paid for a various level of expertise, but these are typically where you're talking about. So let's talk about the salary trajectory. The closer you are to the technology, the worse your salary is going to be. The closer you are to the business, the higher your salary is going to be. And this is something that was a really hard lesson for me to learn. And if you look at, for example, so let me show you why. So there's a couple of things that I wouldn't mind showing you, and then after that, I'll give you some more information. Bear with me 1 second. Want to try to make this happen for you. On the fly, setting up like a bunch of slides, so bear with me. Okay, good. Oops. Right, where'd this thing go? Okay, so the first thing you need to look at is when you see an architecture is you always have to look at your macroeconomic supply and demand curve. Now, I know I did 2 master's degrees and the second one was an MBA, but I loved economics so much. I think I learned more about economics than I actually did about business in my MBA program. Probably read 300, 400, 500 books. It's a passionate study of mine. And the key to optimizing your salary is always to think about the supply and demand curve. So let's look at a skill that everybody knows. So everybody was told to code. And I love developers. They're great people, but everybody was told to code. And because everybody was told to code, what happens is at a given demand, the supply, and here's great supply, here's very little supply. As you have a lot of supply of people, it really can impact the salary's potential. So right now, we've got someone that can learn, that can code. And you've got a relatively low salary because it's very competitive, because there's a lot of people fighting for the same jobs. Now, when we start moving ourselves into the world of the solutions architect, for example, what we actually find is that you having people that know how to do the work, there are plenty, but having people that actually know how to design is very challenging, because a lot of people don't know how it works. They know how to do stuff. And for design, you have to understand how to look at the business, look where they're trying to go, and create a strategy to get them there. So right then and there, you're typically hitting this higher point on the supply and demand curve. So if we look at the average cloud architect salary, it's somewhere around $200,000 a year. Average. Now, it can go much higher. Now, when we start adding some executive skills to the architect, better business acumen, better leadership, better sales, better executive presence, better emotional intelligence, now you start hitting a higher point. And I know plenty of chief architects that earn $500,000 to $1 million a year. And that's an enterprise architect. But these people are very big. They're very strategic. They know how to optimize business. And that's the difference. So if you really want to look at it, the most money you're going to earn is by really focusing on business skills. And that's why we have our enterprise architect programs and our our executive programs, where we really dive deep into the business piece that's going to get you there. And here's the reason why. I want everybody to understand the impact of, various components of education. So if you look at this carefully, you can see a principal solutions architect at Amazon. I had a principal architect role within the first 2 years of tech. They're paying about $372, but the pay range is say $300 to $500. And if you look at a principal architect at Microsoft, it pays about $378. I don't have it, with the same $300 to $500 pay range. Google pays way more than everybody else for every other job. So we can look at Google with an average pay for a principal architect of about $508,000, but the range is like $397 to $700. But let's look happens when we start moving into other roles in business. The managing director, that's pretty much an MBA that comes in. The IT director, who's an MBA type leader, people manager. The senior director at Palo Alto, that's managing a team of people at $540,000. The average senior director at Cisco is earning $527,000, $28,000, because it's Cisco and all these roles, it's about your business acumen. So you're going to have, to make a decision in your career. Do you want to go the executive role, or do you want to go the specialty role? Now, if you do want to stay specialty role in tech, you're going to have to do what I did. And in the first 2 years, I tried to fight the system. I wanted to stay super technical because, truthfully, I love the technology. And I was a principal network architect. I had done a CCIE. I had which I had done the 6 other certifications. I had done 1,000 plus hours of lab time. I read every book you can possibly imagine, every RFC. I even had a 1-hour BGP interrogation by the CEO of one of the big software one of these network as a service companies. He used to write the BGP code. He even interviewed for him for an hour. And I had an hour of questions, and it ended an hour later when I said, "I'm sorry, I don't know how to answer this one." And they laughed hysterically. That's how deep I was. Now that I reached a point where I couldn't go any further, there's this glass ceiling for technology people. And I was at the principal architect role. I could have moved into the distinguished architect role, which was cool, but there's a salary max for that. there's a huge salary max. And then one day I had a manager that really, really helped me. And it was about 24 years ago. What happened is my manager said, oh, yeah, well, the company I work for determined that everybody was going to get had to get a CISSP because we wanted to show the world we all knew security. So they brought everybody in for this 5-day CISSP boot camp. And for the most part, we all passed it over the 5 days. But my manager brought me in, and my manager told me, he said, Mike, you want to know the difference between a $150,000 solutions architect like you and a $300,000 enterprise architect? And this was 20 some years ago. Salaries have gone up a lot. And I said, please tell me. And he said, Mike, you're awesome with tech. He said, that's only going to get you so far. He said, the real difference for you, because you have big dreams, is to figure out how do you impact your clients more. And I said, isn't my tech work enough? And my manager said, no. He said, you're changing the tech. I need you to change the organization. Find a way to make your clients' businesses better. Find a way to use the technology to give them a competitive advantage, which means learn their business, have the business acumen to understand their business, get the executive presence to ask the C-suite so you can be brought to the C-suite to get real information. Learn how to give a presentation, learn how to influence $1 billion buying decision, and learn how to sell. He said, that's going to take you to this big role. He did. My manager sent me to training. I finished my MBA, and poof, I was right after that. So the salary trajectory for architects depends on where you want to take it. If you want to take it to the distinguished principal area range, you're typically going to max out around 300 to 350, max, no matter what you do. And that's still a handsome salary that you can live great on. If you want to go down the business path and start going down the executive path, you got to realize that an enterprise architect or any of these architects with like MBA level business knowledge with or without the MBA now can move into any management director role they want. And in many cases, the enterprise architect can move directly into a CIO or a CTO role. So again, big roles. So you have to determine where you want to take your architecture career. More on the tech side, more on the business side. And honestly, we can earn enough money on any of these things, but and where would you go? So if I had a security architect, where's there going to be in their max? They're probably the security architect's going to become the chief information security officer. If I've got an enterprise architect who's also a business architect, they can take any executive position inside the company. And they know all the executives and all the key stakeholders inside of a company. And they can move to a CIO role or any kind of executive role, a VP role, an SVP role. And you saw what a senior director role pays in one of these companies. Imagine what a VP or an SVP role pays. So I hope that helps. Please feel free to ask more. Hi, Mike. You've been GRC manager for some time, and you have done rotation in different security domains for the last 10 years. Currently studying for the CISM, I would like to apply for director level. What advice would I give you? So director level, are you a manager of people in governance, resource, and compliance, or are you a manager like managing technology, managing GRC issues? Because generally speaking, the difference going from a worker role, an individual contributor role, to a management is leadership skills. So what is your level of business acumen? Can you understand various components of business and the various inputs and outputs of business and how to understand the impact of one to the other? Because you're going to have to, because you're going to have to manage people to get them to a strategic goal. So that's one thing that you're going to have to do. Manage people. No, and good, you're a people manager, great. So as we move up from people, at the manager level, it's more about getting our work people to do their job. At the director level, it's more about getting our managers to do the job and making sure their teams do the job. So what really changes? And I can tell you what took me from that manager level all the way to that chief architect level, and it was the same thing. It's really finesse. It's really your executive presence. When you walk in, you command the room. It's really about having a soft touch and the right level of emotional intelligence and the right level of empathy to be able to see things from other people's perspective and communicate them in a manner that you might need to. For example, so that's going to be a big part of it. Some of it's going to be your polish. I don't know your level of polish, and I don't know the level of presentations you're typically doing. I can tell you what took me into these bigger director level and above roles was it always came down to presentations. In fact, I remember I had a manager, her name was Rhonda. She actually was the first person to tell me that I should learn something called executive presence. And I had done a presentation at Cisco, and it was designed for all the systems engineer at Cisco. So it was training for about 5,000 systems engineers that I was doing. And Rhonda saw the video. And as soon as she saw the video, Rhonda shook out her hand and she said, Mike, I'm so proud of you. I hate to lose you. I know you won't put on a team for long. And I said, huh? And she said, I saw your presentation with that gravitas presence. You will have a much bigger job overnight. So again, I'm so proud of you, but it was really nice to work with you. A few weeks later, I had a big job. When I got on that job, my manager said, no, in order to be more, I need more presence. So I got an executive coach and I moved up and I moved up and moved up. So it's going to be your leadership skills, your business acumen, your communication, your collaboration, the ability to guide and facilitate. This is going to get you there. And that's going to be the thing. The CISM won't get you there. I have no problem. And I recommend the CISM because it's going to give you a good different for strategic perspective. I think it's fine if you're going for a director level position in cybersecurity. But if the director level position is not in cybersecurity, more business. I'll also tell you what's really great for directors of cybersecurity goes back to that CISSP. And the reason is it goes so heavy into risk mitigation, into risk management. And it kind of gives you that high level perspective of all the other people's jobs at just enough level that you'll be able to understand what they're doing, but not at the level of having to need to do it itself, which gives you the ability to focus on the skills that matter. Executive communication, executive presence, business acumen, macroeconomics, microeconomics. And when you understand all these things that are going on, now you're really in a position to drive change. And if it's in cybersecurity, that's exactly the path that I would go. And feel free to join us on any of our free webinars, and we can talk on Zoom. I can interview you even if you want, and I can tell you your level of presence, communication skills, and with more knowledge, I could tell you where your gaps are and where you should go. And I would be more than happy to. Dingleman, hi, Mike. You've been working your way through the security program and learning a lot. Good. How many years does it take to truly master security? So let's talk about what it takes to become an expert. For real, not somebody putting, I'm an expert. So typically speaking, it takes about 10,000 hours in a field and a narrow field. So what does this mean? This means that Dingleman, when you're working, let's say you worked as a network security architect. After 5 years full-time, you would be considered an expert. That's the earliest you would be considered an expert. Now, Dingleman, how fast for you to be good? Let's face it, you're already working at one of the best technology companies in the world in a security position, and that's great. You're in our program, and in our program, not only are you learning zero trust architectures and NIST architectures and how to design security architectures and how to design secure cloud and data center architectures, we're even giving you the 3 certifications that, in my mind, really help give you the framework to the things to learn what you're learning, the CISSP, the CCSP, and the CISM. And that's like some of your stock certifications, and then we dive pretty deep in it. And as smart as you are, Dingleman, with the speed that you actually learn, I think in a year you could be pretty solid. And actually, inside of a year, I think you could be better than a lot of people that have been in tech for 15 to 20 years. And I say this, Dingleman, because I know you. I met you when I first met you, and I've seen how far you've come. I see how fast you learn. But when I was working as a principal architect, they wanted close to 20 years experience for that job. I had less than 2. And I was advising consulting systems engineers that had 15 years experience on them, and other systems engineers and sales engineers that had 2 and 3 decades of experience. And here I was with a year and a half experience training them and working with them. And I was the escalation point for them in our actual company. So I think in a year, with the speed that you learn, you can be pretty great. And all in all, in my experience, about a year of hard work, you can get to the point where you're really good. and you've been working at it pretty hard. So I have big expectations for you, Dingleman. And I know your real name, but I have very big expectations for you. I'm very proud of you. I'm very happy at how far you've come. I love the inner will that you have to keep going. And I know how you've gone through challenges, and we've done it together. I think you're doing great, Dingleman. I think you're really, really doing great. Thank you for your question. Is a degree needed for a cloud architect role? Yannick, it's hilarious. I just filmed a video on this morning on this exact thing. No, it is not necessary to actually have any type of degrees to become a cloud architect. And, it gets pretty interesting. You do need a very specific set of skills. And if you want, I'll give you a little information on it. But no, I can tell you Daniel Bosu was a student of ours. He didn't even graduate high school, but JP Morgan Chase hired him as a solutions architect. I can tell you I've trained many people that don't have degrees that have gotten cloud architect, solutions architect, and other architecture roles. That I can tell you. Now, I can give you some facts and figures and statistics, which I find incredibly to know. So Alphabet or Google use skills-based hiring and drop their degree requirements. Meta, for the most part, has no degree requirements either. And Apple has been hiring people based on skills rather than degrees forever. IBM has given up their degree requirements. Bank of America has given up their degree requirements. Delta Airlines, Lockheed Martin, they've all given up degree requirements. And I can tell you why. What'll happen is, people are coming out of school without the necessary skills that employers actually need for the job. I've got people that have finished a master's degree in cloud computing. And the reality is they come to us and they spend 9 months with us and we get them a cloud architect job. But they already have a master's degree in cloud computing, but they know nothing of cloud computing. I've had people come in with master's degrees in networking and security. And when you ask them basic security things, they just don't know. And it's because there's a disconnect between what's being taught at universities, what's really needed by employers. So the trends are that 81% of employers are now practicing skill-based hiring in 2024, and now we're 2025. That went up 73% since 2023. And 89% of tech companies report satisfaction by hiring based upon skills. So you don't need a degree. Now, what you do need is the skills to be the architect. 100%. And you do need the skills that typically come out of a degree. Now, I'll tell you what the main things that came out of a degree were. One, learning how to learn. When you're forced to take all of these courses, and they could be about every topic known to man, completely unrelated to anything that you're interested in, or even your career, it opens your mind to learning a lot of different things. This is a good thing because in life, we'll have to learn a lot of different things. In college, they typically teach you how to write. There is no job in today's world that pays anything that's decent without good writing skills. So you can learn writing skills a lot of ways. I'm not going to even tell you that I got great writing skills in college. I actually had professional writing educators after college, or professional educators to teach me how to write better after my both master's degrees. But you have to know how to write. Here's something that you would learn from school, and it would be burned in your mind if you learned it in school, and most people make this mistake every single day. How to get information. A cloud architect, an enterprise architect, an AI architect, a physician, an attorney, a psychologist do not get information from Reddit, blogs, internet forum. We are taught to go to credible sources of information, peer-reviewed journals, industry publication, trade books, and experts, which is typically the exact opposite way most people get their information. So please keep that in the back of your mind. That's what you get out of college. You don't need it out of college, but you can get it. Now, knowing how to document sources of information so you're not taking credit from anybody's work, and you know how to substantiate your work with evidence. That's going to be there. And one of the things we used to get out of college, which unfortunately we're not getting out of college, is how to see both sides of the situation. No matter where you look at a situation, as you change vantage points, the perspective of the people is going to change, because most people can only see what's directly in front of them. And in college, they used to make you see both sides. If you do this, This helps this, but this hurts this. And when you understood how the impact or change of one part of something affected something else, then you could collect all the information to make your own informed decision. Now colleges are more about telling you how to think than teaching you how to think. So these are the reasons organizations that are now bypassing degree requirements. You don't need it. You can get the best jobs ever. Funny, my first degree I'm a nurse practitioner. I practiced internal medicine for many years. And then after that, I went and got an MBA. Sure, I did a CCIA and a CISSP, but I went to training and education to learn tech, which is completely different from any of the things in my degrees. Great question, Yannick. Chris, we can bring in the next one. As a cloud architect, how do you tailor your communication when speaking to the CEO, CIO, and CTO? Do I tailor my approach to each one differently? Absolutely. So if the CIO is concerned with the availability, performance, and security of their systems, I have to talk about that. For example, if the CIO came to me and the CIO talked about last year we had 2 hours of downtime and we need to get to a point of 99.999% availability, which is 5 minutes and 15 seconds of downtime, I might talk to the CEO about what it takes to get to 5.9. And I might talk about the types of data centers that we need, the number of data centers we need. I might talk about the change control procedures we need, the level of redundancy, and where the redundancy needs to be. And that would be an appropriate CIO level conversation. Now, if the CEO is talking to me about their 15% compound annual growth rate, and the CEO is concerned that there's a competitor that's coming in there that can eat at their growth rate, the conversation that I have to have that with that CEO is about providing strategic advantage, providing either a first mover advantage or providing a productivity enhancement to their employees that can actually help that organization make a meaningful change. And I'm going to have to get in there and provide metrics and be able to talk about it. Chief technology officer is going to be more focused on technology, where the CIO is going to be more focused on strategy. So I'm going to have an enterprise level architect conversation with the CTO, because an enterprise architect is really a CTO. That's what we're talking about here. So at each time I'm going to tailor my communication when I speak to the engineers. I'm going to tailor my communication when I speak to each stakeholder. I'm going to tailor my communication when I speak to the customers, who may be ordinary people versus executives. I'm always going to be tailoring my conversation. And that's one of the most critical skills as an architect in sales and consulting, is to know your audience and be able to put the right people in the right audience. And sometimes a lot of times architects exist. When I was younger, we tried to bring a lot of engineers to explain a lot of technology things. And I've seen an engineer in a CEO's office try to talk about the number of packets per second through the backplane of a switch. We had to escort that person out of the building, because we would have lost the sales deal. Now, the person was smart, but they didn't know the relevance to the audience. So yes, we have to be relevant to whatever audience we're talking about. We're speaking to the CFO, it's predominantly about financial resources, because that's their job, for example. Good questions. If you've got more, please ask. I'm happy to add to it. Rose, you're interested in pursuing a career change from business and HR to tech as a cloud architect. How critical is it to have a foundational knowledge of networking knowledge to build a sustainable career? So you're going to have two things. One is, I'm going to tell you, of all the people that I've trained in my life, and I've taken engineers with 20 years experience, I've taken nurses, I've taken teachers, I've taken psychologists, I've taken everybody from every role known to man. The easiest people that become cloud architects, in my experience, are medical professionals. They are business executives. They are management consultants. They are sales reps. They are teachers. And they're anybody that has to do a lot of what I call consultative selling. And what do I mean by consultative selling? Is to be able to find someone or something's needs, and to be able to figure out what you can do to solve those problems, and do it in a manner that's the best manner. So a doctor, for example, is an architect. And the reason architecture was so easy is I had a life where someone would come into the office and they'd say, Mike, I have a problem. My throat hurts. And what was that? That was the problem they came in. And I'm going to use this to explain which people have the easiest time. But anybody can be an architect. But the doctor, the nurse practitioner, okay, I've got a problem. the nurse practitioner, doctor, physician assistant asks some questions. What makes your throat better? What makes it worse? That kind of thing. The doctor does a diagnosis, and the doctor creates a plan to treat the patient. What does an architect do? Mike, I'm trying to increase sales. Okay, that's your end goal. Great. Now I need to collect some information. Okay, what's your sales process? How do your sales reps do their job? What are the sales reps saying is the hardest part of their job? What are the customers saying is uncomfortable with the sales experience? I got to learn where those problems are. Same way the doctor had to ask the patient. Now, at this point, I need to generate a hypothesis to figure out, and then test these hypotheses to figure out what the problem is, just like the doctor did or the nurse practitioner did when they took a list of diagnoses, possibilities, and then narrowed it down by asking questions. And then the architect builds a plan. Doctor interview a patient, architect interview a client, doctor make a diagnosis, architect make a diagnosis, doctor make a plan, architect make a plan. So the business skills are the main components of the role. Now, the rest of it is going to be technology design skills. And if you don't understand networking, and not the how to, but if you don't understand networking, there's not a single thing that will work. Because without a network, you've got all these things that can't talk to each other. So networking is critical. Data center knowledge is absolutely critical. Critical. So if you know the data center and you know networking, you know all the cloud. So that's going to be in a career. But don't worry about your background. Vladimir was a 24-year-old college student when we met him, and he left as a cloud architect for North Highland. For example, Pierre was working on sailboats. He did have a degree, but he was working on sailboats. I know he didn't have a degree. Really great guy. Got hired by LeaseWeb as a solutions architect as soon as he finished our program. Lenny was our video editor, really smart guy, hired as a solutions architect at Citrix after our program. Jeffrey was a geologist doing geospatial imaging, which was really cool. And we trained him and got him a cloud architect job at Kalient. So Balwinder was a stay-at-home mom, and we trained her, and then she got hired by Microsoft as a cloud architect. So it doesn't really matter where your starting point is. But yes, you're going to have to learn networking. And that's why when we train people, we have a 1,000-hour training program. We teach the network, the data center, the cloud. But we also teach all the other architect skills, like how to give an architecture presentation or respond to an RFI, RFP, RFQ, or lead an architecture team, or facilitate a meeting, or design end-to-end security, design the networking. We get into all of it. But that's what you're going to need to do. And I welcome you. It's a great job. Coming from a business perspective is great. And some of that HR is probably going to be helpful too, because HR follows a similar process. You've got to look at what do we need to pay an employee, what kind of benefits, and then you're going to be comparing and contrasting various plans that are out there with the strengths and weaknesses of each one. And after the analysis, you're going to make the determination what's in the best interest of your organization and its people. That's architecture. So that's going to be a much easier transition. I've trained engineers too, and I love engineers. For example, I'm trying to think of some of the engineers. Jawad, for example, had 10 years as a cloud engineer, and it took us about 9 months to train him. But Ivan Tamba had 6 months with us, and his last job was a waiter. So whatever your background is, you can get there. And 5 years in sales, boy, that's going to really help you, Rose. You're going to be so successful so quickly. And you'll have no problem selling yourself to the hiring manager. Dino 999. Does a Gen A architect pay more than a solutions architect? And can you compare the two duties when it comes to networking and building relationships? So Dino 909, the solutions architect is the least of all the architecture roles and will always pay the least for the most part, unless you're an incredibly good sales rep and you're getting a lot of sales bonuses. So I actually drew it out earlier, and let me kind of explain to you, if I still have the drawing I made earlier. If I don't have it, I won't go there, but I'm pretty sure, what happened here? So, okay. So if we go back to this diagram I would use, and we really see what we're dealing with at the top level of architects. We've got our enterprise architects, which are predominantly focused on optimizing the business and tech and aligning the people, processing, and technology, mostly an executive role. And then we could either have what you call a cloud architect, platform architect, or lots of people, which are people that are going to be, with a cloud architect, going to be dealing with pretty much all the systems. Now, when we get to the AI architect, what happens is the AI architects will be working for these companies. And if the cloud architect is here, the AI architect is going to be giving guidance to them, to the organization. How do we do this? How do we optimize? And they're going to have their own. And then what'll happen is when you're an AI architect, you're going to need somebody's stuff, right? You need to figure out what technology we might be using. So we might be calling NVIDIA to have their solutions architects help us to figure out what it would cost to host it in our data center. We might actually go from call a solutions architect from AWS to ask them for their specifics on what they're actually doing. Then we might call a solutions architect from IBM to see the IBM technologies that we could potentially use in our architecture. And then the AI architect, which is going to be much more strategic than the solutions architect, is going to say, well, I got this information from NVIDIA, this information from AWS, this information from IBM, this information from Nutanix. The best solution for us is a Nutanix cloud with a bunch of NVIDIA GPUs, or go to AWS or whatever. So when you understand that, I need you to know that the solutions architect is always going to be the least strategic, in many cases, some of the lowest paying roles out there, because the focus is so close to the technology as opposed to strategy. Now, I will tell you that the AI architects are in a beautiful position right now. Now, all architects are in a beautiful position. There is a shortage of 750,000 cybersecurity professionals in the US. And that's before that $500 billion on Stargate, which is going to be a massive amount of data centers that are coming in, which will drive the need for networking people and security people and other infrastructure, because most of it's not going to be cloud-based. They said they build real estate. So, there's going to be a lot of that. Now, but we do hit that really nice point on that supply and demand curve with regards to AI, and I can show you why. It all goes back to our trusty, rusty supply and demand curve. And what I mean by that, I'll go back to that really carefully. So right now, if we look at people that know AI for real, now everybody that heard of AI in the last year is an AI expert, but most of them have no knowledge about anything with regards to AI. So let's talk about a real AI person. So David Lithicum is our chief instructor for AI architecture, and he architected our AI architecture program. David started working with AI in 1985. David's work was so good with AI in the 80s that he worked for NASA in the 90s because of his AI abilities. And then he's been using AI ever since. Personally, I've only been working with AI systems and designing for AI systems since 2001. David's a better person to teach it, which is why I have him teach it, because he's got many more years of expertise. So let's go back to the supply and demand curve. So while software development may be here because everybody was taught in code to college and everybody was told to code, having people that know anything real about AI is really already in a good part of the supply and demand curve. And I don't care if this is good AI engineers or good architects, there's a lot here. Now, when you combine that knowledge, along with the ability to sell, the ability to design for business enhancements, the ability to leave, some emotional intelligence, some CXO relevancy, you are in the perfect storm for very high salaries. There are plenty of generative AI architects earning $500,000 or more per year right now because they've got good skills. They've got all those business skills. They've got all those technology skills, and they're there. It's not the typical average, but they're going to be there. Now, when it comes to networking is going to be how you treat people over the years. It's none of this nonsense where people just say, follow me and click something on it. A real network of 10 people that will truly help you, that you can call, that'll do anything for you, is worth 100,000 followers on Facebook that don't care or know if you're even alive. So I'm not saying don't use these social media platforms. Do use them, but I'm talking about real relationships. I've got relationships from my first job. And why do I have these relationships? I had them either because I helped someone in a big way or they helped me in a big way. And there's a friendship, there's a reciprocity, and it's there. So When you treat your clients well, when you go to your clients and you say, this is going to enhance your business, and then 2 years later, it does, you will have the biggest network. But how do I network? For the most part, what I do is I speak to my clients, I work with my clients, and I deliver well for my clients. And I've got a list of people that I've worked with. I also have a list of people that I've trained that have been in very good things, but I would go to a lot of conferences. So in my life, I would speak at say 2 to 3 conferences a week. There was always some conference in the world. One day I'd be in England, another day I'd be in Dubai, another day I'd be in Greece, another day I'd be in San Francisco. So that was the life of me. So when I'd go to conferences, I always made a point of meeting people. And I'd have a conversation with someone. I'd buy someone dinner. I'd buy him a drink, and I would talk. And after that, I'd can make a connection request. If I was in town, I'd potentially say, hey, would you like to catch up? I build real relationships. And I do this in any role I have, because the ability to pick up the phone and say, I'm looking for a new project or a new job, and have one of 10 people in the world say, all right, Mike, I'll arrange a position with the VP of architecture the next day. That matters to me. And that comes from really delivering. There's so many people out there that would say, I took Mike's course and now I've got big architecture jobs. The results are really what it's there. So go out there and deliver, and you're not going to have any problem. But go out there, deliver, meet people, call people on the phone, go to dinner with them, meet in a physical location. Real relations. They're worth their weight in gold, platinum, and diamonds. Good question, Dino 909. Kind of cool name, too. Chris, we can bring in the next one. And please, don't be shy. I'm happy to answer your questions. Hi, Mike. Is your training for enterprise architecture and security architecture the same? No. You'd like to start working with me in enterprise and architect. Which training should you work with? On both for more than 6 years. So here's my perspective. Every architect, as a rule, would benefit from enterprise architecture training. And I even made a video about it before, and here's the reason why. 70 to 80% of all cloud projects, meaning architectures that move to the cloud, fail to provide any value. And since enterprise architecture is how you create that digital transformation or the value, which is about aligning people, processes, and technology, a good enterprise architect is somebody that has these skills is always in demand and will always be employed. If you can make your client successful and do it again and again and again and be great, people are going to be reaching out to you because it's terrific. So I recommend those skills for everyone, except if you really wanted to be a security architect. Now you're dealing with a complete opposite direction. So the security architect is an expert on security. They are focused on the security architecture. Now, I'll tell you where the intersections are. I really will, because I want you to understand them, but I'd rather you pick one, security architect or enterprise architect. Now, if you told me cloud architect, I'd say just do the enterprise architect program, which includes our cloud architecture program, but is actually different. But for security architect, it's a bit different because now we're dealing with a specific type of knowledge. It's a specific type of specialty architect. Security architect's a great job. Average pay right now is about $229. The salary range on Glassdoor was $183 to $292 the last time Alonzo from my team checked. And but it's a different kind of thing. So what are we going to be doing? We're going to be creating security policies. We're going to be creating incident response procedures. We're going to be creating disaster recovery plans. We're going to be creating the security. We're going to be designing for the network security, application security, IAM, data security, governance, risk, compliance, physical security. So we're going to have to know these skills, and that's going to be our focus. Security is more about risk mitigation than it is about enhancing the organization's efficiency. Every time we add security to a business, unfortunately, it's going to be a hit on efficiency. So the security architect is going to be focused on how do we provide the most security with the least impact on the business, where the enterprise architect is focusing, how do we make the biggest impact on the business? And what do we need to do? So they're kind of going in the opposite direction. You could do great at either one. You could be a enterprise architect or a security architect, but they're kind of going in the opposite directions. Security architecture is much more about your security strategy and your capabilities to defend and protect. And enterprise architecture is more about your ability to be a financial genius and align people, processes, and technologies to optimize business. I hope that helps with. So, which one should you start with? Whatever one you're really more interested in. I don't really care about your background. I know we're going to give you every skill you need so you'll be successful. For example, Arun was working at Home Depot and not in a tech role, but he took immediately a job at TELUS after we trained him as a cloud architect. But he had great skills. I mean, anybody would have been lucky to have him. He had great architecture skills. So, those are the kind of things that are there. So which would you prefer to do? Why don't you join us on a webinar, and we can actually ask you questions, and you can tell me what you're more interested in, and I'd love to do anything I can to help you. Out of curiosity, an interesting name. Are you from Portugal or Brazil? And if you've got some last questions, I had a lot of Portuguese friends that had the name Oliveira as well, so just curious. So if you've got some questions, please bring it in. Don't be shy. I'm not scary. I don't bite. I just really want to help you. What's the difference in skills required for a generative AI architect and a cloud architect other than domain? The focus of the job. The cloud architect is focused on everything. I mean, everything. So the multi-cloud architecture, the security architecture, the applications that are going to be used inside of the business, the cloud architect is focused on the network, the identity strategies, the databases that are going to be used. So the cloud architect's focused on everything. And when you focus on everything, you can't dive real deep into anything. Now, the AI architect is focused on just AI. So the AI architect still needs to understand the network and the data center because they need to understand where they're going to be running their technology. But the AI architect is going to be more focused on different things. So sure, the AI architect needs to understand network design, just like a cloud architect, but at a lower level, or not at as much depth because they're focused more on AI. They still need to understand, the types of architectures like a private cloud, hybrid cloud, and hybrid multi-cloud. The AI architect still needs to understand some data design fundamentals. For example, where's the compute going to be done? Is it going to be on a GPU or a TPU or something to that effect, or an ASIC or FPGA? The AI architect needs to know a bit about security, a bit. Now, where we start getting into deeper knowledge for the AI architects is data design skills. We're going to need a lot more governance, compliance, but also ethics skills. Now with AI design, we need to have some real knowledge of databases and training data sets. We need to have a lot of deep knowledge with regards to inference engines and what types of AI models we could build. Do we use an LM? Do we use a small language model? Are we going with agentic AI versus some LMs? We need to think about what we're trying to do. And then we need to understand how we would train these models, the kind of models we would actually use, how they would be trained, how they'd be tested. And we need to know enough about AI operations so we could create a governance strategy around AI. So it's a lot different because it's a strategic role that's getting straight into AI, where the cloud architect role is literally everything. Just literally speaking, everything. So generalist role versus specialist. And if you think about it, if you've ever gone to your physician, you probably have a primary care provider. And that's the person you go to when you've got a headache, when you've got a rash on your arm, for your normal check-ins, you've got a sore throat, you go to the primary care provider. And for normal stuff, that primary care provider does it for you. Maybe they give you an antibiotic, or they give you a headache medication, or your blood pressure is a little high and they give you medication for it. Now, all of a sudden, the primary care provider says, I hear some heart murmur that I don't like. I see an EKG that I don't like. I'm shipping you to the cardiologist. The cardiologist focuses basically on the heart and the circulatory system, predominantly the heart. So the cardiologist, the specialty expert, is the equivalent of the AI architect, where the cloud architect is the generalist that you see for everything that serves as a connection point to everyone else. So cloud architect, you're going to ultimately need a little better business skills, a little better sales skills, a little more executive presence, a little better presentation skills. And you're going to need this because you're going to have to build a huge team of people working for you. And one of the people working for you is going to be the AI architect. Another person will be a security architect. Another person will be a network architect. Another person will be an IM architect. Another person is probably going to be an application architect. Another couple of data scientists and machine learning engineers, software developers, cloud engineers, DevOps engineers, and together you're going to create a team. And that team together, because you've chosen people from all backgrounds, are going to be strong because each person's going to have a different way of solving problems. So at the cloud architect level, you're doing more than that. At the AI architect level, you're still asking questions of these people to get guidance, but you're more zeroed in. You're more the go-to person for your AI architecture. Hope that really helps, Ricardo. If you've got questions, please ask questions. Otherwise, I'm going to get back to work. I know it's been a busy day. I never have a day that's easy, and I'm always happy to go back to work and do more things. But if you've got questions, I've got a few more minutes. I'd love to help. Don't be shy. Ask them now. While I wait to see if there are any questions, I wanted to remind a few people about a few things that we have right now. So I want to tell everybody that in the description of this video, we've got a lot of resources for you. Resources on how to win the interview, resources on how to become a cloud architect or an AI architect or an enterprise architect, resources on many things, and they're all completely free. Also wanted to tell you about tomorrow, we're going to have a webinar on how to become an AI architect. And it's not just going to be me. It's going to be me and David Lithicum. David Lithicum was basically Deloitte's chief cloud strategist, which was their chief cloud architect. And I've had these big architecture roles for 25 years. David has about 35 years experience, about 10 as an architect, about 10 more years on me. So I really want to make it a good time for everyone. It's going to be about AI architects, but if you've got questions of cloud architecture, enterprise architecture, security architecture, we'll answer them there too. We just love architecture, David and I. It's our life's work. And if you enjoyed this time, maybe give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to assist you in your technology career. See if there's any last questions, and if not, Chris and I are going to get back to work. Okay, no more questions. Take care, everyone.